The PAW Patrol has faced many villains and formidable foes, but which one of them can truly be considered the best? Well, I'll be ranking and reviewing every one of them to answer that. Before we start, I'd like to explain some things. First, what do I consider a good villain to be? I don't mean good as in their intent, but rather traits that make them an interesting villain to see on screen. Some of those traits specifically are their abilities and just how well they're able to use them, to what extent they'll go to complete their objectives, as well as their overall personality. Now, a look at the tiers. At the top, there's S tier for the best of the bad, but as we go lower, the prestige will lessen until F tier for the worst of the bad. Also, I'll be going through basically every character individually, meaning sidekicks will be reviewed separately from their masters, and most teams will be done one member at a time. Additionally, villains from Rebel and Crew will be excluded. With all that done, let's begin. Firstly, we've got Victoria Vance, the main antagonist of PAW Patrol the Mighty movie. She seems to be a pretty capable villain even before getting her mighty powers. She had accomplished stealing Tom and Janet's electromagnet, constructed the contraption of her meteor magnet, and successfully lured Sky to snatch her crystal. However, her gaining mighty powers certainly did improve her abilities and made the scenes she appeared in much more interesting to see. Personality-wise, pretty much what one could expect for a character deemed the mad scientist. While it may not have been that unique, it still brought a handful of amusing moments. She'll be getting placed in A tier. Now we have the members of the Rough Pack. We'll start with Hubcap. He's portrayed as the leader of the pack. However, he's not very qualified for that role. Most of his ideas are just him echoing his teammate Gasket, and on the rare occasion he does have an idea, it usually ends up in shambles. Not to mention that for leading a biker gang, he's pretty poor at riding a motorcycle, allegedly having wrecked at least 4. Also, while his teammates seem to get along well with one another, he is often the source of any rifts within the band. With that, he'll be going in D tier. Then there's Gasket. As I just mentioned, she is the source of most of the team's plans, both good and bad, and she's also created many devices and gadgets for the squad from scratch using scraps. Her creations for the crew range from remote control drones to full-on bikes. While they usually aren't without a few kinks, those could be credited to the poor materials and or limited time she has to build them. Regarding her personality, she's fairly sassy and sarcastic in most unfavorable situations, though she can be a bit more lighthearted and goofy otherwise. Overall, an amusing character. Although she may not have an impressive display, I do imagine she's got potential, so she'll go into B tier. As for Dwayne, he barely has the qualifications to be considered a villain. He'll follow along with his teammates and their plans, but when it comes to his own interests, they're often much more wholesome and without ill intent. He's even rejected and declined some of the pack's schemes. However, he seems to be the best biker in the gang, shown to not make many mistakes unlike the others. Also, I enjoy his bright, chirpy personality a fair bit, therefore he'll be getting a place on C tier. Then we've got Mayor Humdinger, the PAW Patrol's first and most iconic foe. I'll be reviewing his character in the series separately from him in the future films, since they can be fairly different. Beginning with Humdinger in the series. Concerning his capabilities, he can conjure many plans, from ways to get his hands on valuable items and objects to ways to lure beings somewhere, pretty much always at the benefit of either himself or his town of Foggy Bottom. While he's often perceived as somewhat of a bumbling buffoon, which is deserved at times, he surprisingly still can be fairly successful in accomplishing his endeavors, especially with the assistance of his kitten Catastrophe Crew. Though, when it comes to his personality, it's a bit mixed. During the early seasons, he's shown to be clever and cunning with an old-timish conman atmosphere about him, also filled with jealousy and resentment for the PAW Patrol and Adventure Bay. As the show goes on and he's repeatedly defeated and outdone by them, his personality becomes a much more childish and unserious one, with him always getting the short end of the stick, and one of his main traits becoming his whininess. That in particular has led him to be a character less favored by viewers these days. Although his serious and professional persona has dropped, I still think he can be an enjoyable character at at times. In recent seasons, he's picked up somewhat of a diva personality, which has amused me. I do believe that he would be a much more tolerable character if they just removed the whininess from him. With that, I think he'll go in B tier. However, when it comes to Humdinger in the movies, I consider it much better. It certainly capitalizes on his successful conman rich man character of the early seasons even more than ever before. And in the series, he's frequently shown to take his kittens for granted to an unnecessary extent, but in the films, he begins treating them with a lot more care, respect, and as almost equals to himself. He also has some moments where he can be a bit more intimidating, which is rarely seen from him in the show. Overall, I think that the movies took all of his best qualities and compiled them to make a fantastic villain. Movie Humdinger will go in A tier. And if you've enjoyed so far, Chase would like it if you'd like the video and subscribe. Then we've got the kitten Catastrophe Crew. They're mere Humdinger sidekicks who assist with carrying out his schemes. Their capabilities are very similar to those of the PAW Patrols, seeing as all of their gear directly copies the pups. They all are also very stealthy and sneaky, which comes in handy during heists and such. Not to mention their size, which is useful when it comes to fooling people. They've got acting chops too, having tricked a few fellows using those skills before. Personality-wise, we don't see much from them unfortunately, as they get quite little focus. However, we do see them loyal to Humdinger at times, but when he leans on the more ridiculous side, they can become annoyed and irked by him. Overall, they'll sit at B tier beside their leader. Then there's Harold Humdinger, the main antagonist of the Mighty Pups TV movie, as well as following episodes of Mighty Pups themed subseries. Regarding his abilities, he can create gadgets and gizmos on his own. While they often are without much success, there are a handful of functional ones, like his Mighty Meteor Detector, as well as badges that can store mighty energy. However, his build-in powers are enhanced greatly once he gets a hold of a piece of the Mighty Meteor. He can create basically anything he desires simply from grabbing whatever he can. In theory, he could make the perfect contraption to trump the pups, though he's got a fairly big flaw which lies in his personality. He's often overly confident and cocky with his endeavors and, when in poor circumstances, makes spontaneous decisions which usually lead to his defeat. While he's got the potential to outdo the PAW Patrol, unfortunate for him, his composure stands in the way of that. With his combination of carrying great powers but being poorly fit for them, Harold will be getting a spot in B tier. Now, another Humdinger, the Cheetah. Debuting in Ruddy Race Rescue, she's the Whoosh and Marshall's main competition, as well as the Special's antagonist. Her race car is loaded with various tools and tricks that she'd like to cheat herself into first place with. She's also shown to execute heists fairly well, at least with the assistance of none other than her cousin, Mayor Humdinger. However, it's unknown how much she's capable of on her own. Her schemes have relied a lot on her cousin and the KCC, with those kittens even modifying her race car for her. Concerning her personality, she's pretty vain and self-absorbed. She's luckily not all that annoying, but there's really not much else to note of it otherwise. While the gaps she has could be excused by just how little we've seen of her, she'll still be getting placed in C tier. Next we have the Ladybird, one of the villains that came out of the Mighty Pups Super Paws subseries. She's a thief with one and only one goal in mind: steal every shiny object possible. When she's got a hold of a bit of the Mighty Meteor, she's able to fly like a bird and has super strength. While they are helpful for accomplishing her goal, the same can't be said when defending herself against the PAW Patrol. She also has logic that could only rival Chickaletta. Most of the time, it appears that she doesn't think through things at all, like having her nest right on the edge of a cliff's end. Personality-wise, she may have one of the most grating ones on the list. Something about her being set on only one thing leads to not the most favorable character to have on screen. That, combined with the typical cartoon villain composure and the psyche of an actual bird, just didn't make for a character I was a fan of. While this is likely fairly biased, she'll be getting placed in F tier. Then there's Mr. Nibbles, aka the Copycat, the villain of the Mighty Pups Charged Up subseries. Normally, he's known as Mr. Nibbles, the pet kitty of Haley Daily, the news reporter. her. However, after becoming jealous of the attention she gives the Paw Patrol, he acquires a piece of the mighty meteor and transforms into the copycat. Regarding his abilities, he's got all the powers of the Mighty Pups, literally a copy of each of the pups' powers. Most villains usually can't stand a match against the Paw Patrol when it comes to capabilities, but with him being able to do so much of what the pups can, he may be their most formidable foe in this category. When it comes to his personality, I enjoy how confident, dramatic, and almost theatrical he is. He also has a handful of gags that recur with him, like mocking or rather copying people, coughing up hairballs, and repetitiveness when describing things. While these can be annoying at times, I find that they can also be charming at others. Also, the concept of him secretly having the identity of the copycat enthralls me. With all that, I think he'll get a spot in S tier. That's all we have time for today, sadly, but part 2 will certainly be coming soon. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and if so, please go check out that video right there, and as always, I'll see you next time.